Your deposit hits your account on a Wednesday morning. You look at the number. It is smaller than it should be. Not by a few cents, by hundreds of dollars. Mister, no letter came, no phone call, nobody asked your permission, and no judge ever signed anything. Mister, that is the part almost nobody knows. The federal government can reach into a payment it is about to send you and take part of it for an old debt with no court order at all. Verified card, source, Treasury Offset Program, 31 U.S.C. 3716, Administrative Offset of Federal Payments. Mister, not a lawsuit, not a hearing, not a day in front of anybody. A referral in a database and a payment that arrives short. Mister, now here is the sentence that this entire video exists for. There is a floor, a protected amount they are not allowed to go below. Verified card, source, Statutory protected minimum for Social Security benefits subject to offset. Mister, and an enormous number of people who have been offset below that floor never say a word about it, because nobody ever told them the floor exists. They assume the government took what the government was allowed to take, and sometimes that is simply not true. That is one of three things happening to direct deposits right now. The first one is about your own bank, and it is quietly costing people overdraft fees they are entitled to get back. The second one is a number attached to every single deposit you have ever received that almost nobody has ever asked for, and it is the difference between recovering a missing payment in days instead of months. And the third is the offset, the one with no court order. Before this video ends, I will give you the floor, the exact phrase that protects it, and the one number to call. My name is Kevin. I read the rules so you do not have to. If you are new here, this channel exists for one reason. We read the fine print that decides what happens to your money. So you find out before the system decides for you. Subscribe and turn on the bell because every one of these three is running on your account right now, whether anybody told you or not. And I want to say something up front about why none of this reached you. Every one of these three rules is public. None of it is secret. All of it is written down somewhere on a government or regulatory website right now, free for anybody to read. But it is written for lawyers and compliance officers. It is written in the language of the people who enforce it, not the people it protects. So the protection exists, and the person it was built for never hears about it. That is not a conspiracy. It is just what happens when nobody is assigned the job of telling you. That job is what this channel is. Let me start with your own bank, because it is the closest one to you. David, when a deposit arrives electronically, federal rules govern how quickly your bank has to make that money available to you. Verified card. Source, Expedited Funds Availability Act and Regulation CC, Funds Availability Requirements. Not whenever they feel like it. There are actual timeframes written into federal regulation. David, now, banks are allowed to place a hold in certain situations. That part is legitimate. A brand new account, an unusual deposit, a genuine concern about the funds. But here is the part that matters, and it is the part people never hear. David, when a bank places a hold that goes beyond the standard availability window, it is required to give you written notice. Verified card. Source, Regulation CC written notice requirement for extended holds. David written, not a teller saying something quickly at the window, not a line buried in a policy you signed years ago. A notice stating the reason for the hold and the date the money will actually be available. Now think about what happens when that notice does not arrive. Your deposit lands, you believe your money is there because it has always been there on that day. Your automatic payments run, your electric bill, your insurance, your prescription, and every single one of them bounces off a balance the bank is holding. Now the fees start. Your bank charges you for each returned item, and then the companies on the other end charge you their own returned payment fees on top of that. Let me tell you about Bernadine. Bernadine is 69. She lives in Marion, Ohio. She spent 31 years as a licensed practical nurse working nights at a county hospital. She has had the same account at the same bank for over a decade. One spring, her bank placed a hold on her deposit. Several business days. No written notice arrived. Over that weekend, 3 automatic payments processed against money that was legally hers and sitting right there in the building. All 3 came back. Her bank charged her a fee for each one. 2 of the companies charged their own fees on top. By the time it was over, that hold had cost Bernadine well over $170 for money that was already hers, on an account she had held for 11 years. And I want you to sit with the shape of that because it is worse than the number. She did not overdraw her account. There was no month where she spent more than she had. The money was in the building. It was hers. It was simply being held on one side of a wall while her bills bounced off the other side of it. Every fee she paid was a fee for having money she was not allowed to touch. That is what makes this one different from almost everything else I cover. Nobody took anything from Bernadine. They just held it at the wrong moment and told her nothing and let the consequences land on her. And here is what she believed, which is what almost everybody believes. She believed the bank could hold whatever it wanted for as long as it wanted, and that was simply how banks worked. That is not how it works. Those holds operate under federal regulation, and that regulation requires the notice. And there is a reason banks lean on that assumption. A hold is not a punishment. From the bank's side, it is risk management. They are protecting themselves against a deposit that might not be good. That is legitimate. Nobody is saying a bank can never hold anything. But risk management for them becomes a bounced electric bill for you, and the regulation exists precisely to balance those two things. The notice is the balance. It says, you may protect yourself, but you must tell the person whose money it is in writing so they can plan around it. When the notice does not come, the balance is gone. All of the protection sits on one side, and all of the cost sits on yours. So here's the part I want you to actually use. If your bank placed a hold on a direct deposit without giving you written notice, and you were charged overdraft or return payment fees during that hold, you have grounds to ask for those fees back. They will not offer. There is no form that arrives in the mail. Nobody at the branch is going to bring it up. You have to ask. And the people who ask quite often get the money back. And there is one more piece worth knowing. The regulation distinguishes between a standard hold and what is called a reasonable cause hold. A bank invoking reasonable cause is supposed to have a specific, documented reason tied to your account, not a blanket policy applied to everyone. So if a bank tells you reasonable cause and cannot tell you what the actual reason was, that is a question worth pressing, politely, in writing, and to a supervisor if the person in front of you cannot answer it. Now here is the move that protects you before any of this ever happens. Contact your bank in writing and ask for a copy of your account's hold policy for direct deposits. Ask what the standard availability timeframe is for your account type and which exceptions the bank is authorized to apply. Keep whatever they send you, because if a hold ever produces fees you want challenged, that document is your baseline. You are not arguing from memory. You are holding their own written policy. And there is one more habit that costs nothing and catches everything. Turn on deposit alerts. Almost every bank offers them. Most people never switch them on. Set it so your phone tells you the moment a deposit posts and the moment anything is held or reduced. Because the difference between catching a short deposit the same morning and discovering it 4 days later, after the payments have already bounced, is enormous. The first is a phone call. The second is a cleanup. Now the second thing. And this one is a number that exists for every deposit you have ever received in your life, and almost nobody has ever asked for it. Every electronic deposit that moves through the system carries a unique identifier, a trace number. Verified card, source, ACH network transaction trace numbers. It follows that specific payment from the moment it leaves the sender to the moment it lands, end to end. One payment, one number. And it is available to you if you ask for it. Now here is why that matters enormously, and it has nothing to do with normal months. It matters on the month when a payment does not arrive. Let me tell you about Willard. Willard is 74. He lives outside Sedalia, Missouri. He worked for the same regional trucking outfit for 29 years and now draws a pension from them, along with his Social Security. One month, the pension deposit simply was not there. So Willard did what almost everyone does. He called the people who send the money. They opened a ticket. They told him they would look into it. And then he waited. Weeks. Calling back, being told it was still being reviewed. Here is what would have moved faster. Calling the sender is right, but calling them alone is only half of it. The other half is contacting your own bank at the same time and asking them to trace that specific payment. You give them what the payment should have been and when it should have arrived, and you ask them to trace it. With the trace number in hand, your bank can go directly to the institution on the other end through the return process. But without it, everything is slower. Somebody has to search, somebody has to confirm, and every step is a phone call and a wait. With it, the payment has a name, and a payment with a name gets found. But now, why does this matter more for a misdirected payment than a delayed one? Because when a deposit goes to the wrong account, whether through a mistake in a digit or something worse, the clock matters. Money that has landed somewhere can move again. The faster the return process starts, the better the odds. So the practical habit is this. The next time a deposit arrives normally, write down the date it landed and the exact amount. Then, once, ask whoever sends your money for the trace number on that payment. It takes one request. And it teaches you that the number exists, who to ask, and how long they take to produce it, so that on the month something goes wrong, you are not learning the vocabulary for the first time while you are frightened. And there is something else worth knowing about how these payments move, because it works in your favor. The system has gotten faster. More senders are now able to settle a payment the same day, rather than waiting for the next business day. Verified card, source, expanded same-day ACH settlement windows, which quietly shrinks the window in which a hold can even be applied. If your deposit seems to be landing earlier than it used to, that is very likely why. Nothing changed about your account. The pipe underneath it got faster. And a faster pipe means fewer days sitting in limbo where something can go wrong. And now I want to stop here, because Bernadine is the exact reason I built the thing I'm about to tell you about. She paid $170 she never owed, on an account she had held for 11 years, as a woman who worked night shifts in a hospital for 3 decades, and every dollar of it came down to one requirement written in a federal regulation that nobody at that bank ever mentioned to her. That is the whole pattern of this channel. The protection existed. It was written down. It just was not written down anywhere she would ever look. That is what the Quiet Rules is. It is the drawer version of everything I cover here. Written large, written simple. What your bank actually owes you in writing. What to ask for and how to ask. The exact wording that gets a fee reviewed instead of dismissed. So the person at the kitchen table looking at a short balance knows what to do that morning, instead of assuming the bank must be right. The paper remembers for you. That is the entire point of paper. You can find it at kevinexplains.shop. The link is right below this video, or scan the QR code on your screen right now. It is also in the pinned comment at the top, and there is a 7-day guarantee. Always. If it does not hand you something you did not have before, you send it back. Because the alternative is another good woman paying fees on her own money, believing that is simply how it works. If nobody has ever told you your bank owes you a written notice, do me one favor. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because this channel reads the fine print that nobody mails to your house. Oh, now the third one. And this is the one I opened this video with because it is the one with real teeth. There is a federal program whose entire job is to collect debts by intercepting payments the federal government is already sending out. Verified card, source, Treasury Offset Program, Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Tax refunds, federal pensions, federal wages, and Social Security. If you owe a qualifying debt, and that debt has been referred into the system, the money can be taken out of the payment before it ever reaches you. And I want to be precise about what that means because it is the part that shocks people. There is no lawsuit. There is no hearing. Nobody has to prove anything to a judge. Verified card, source, administrative offset does not require a court judgment. The debt gets referred by an agency, it sits in a database, and when a payment with your name on it comes through the system, the offset happens automatically. You find out afterward, usually in a letter that arrives after the money is already gone. Now, what kind of debts are we talking about? Defaulted federal student loans, unpaid federal taxes, certain state debts referred in by state agencies, benefit overpayments, past due support obligations. And here's the piece that catches the most innocent people. A debt referred years ago can still be sitting in that system, long after the person believed the matter was finished. A payment plan that someone thought cleared a balance, a dispute somebody believed was resolved, an overpayment that was discussed on a phone call and never formally closed out. If the referral was never withdrawn, the referral is still live. And a live referral does not expire because you stopped hearing about it. And this is where a lot of decent people get caught, so I want to be very clear about the trap inside it. Silence feels like resolution. You call, you work something out, you make payments, and then the letters stop coming. and a reasonable person concludes that the matter is closed. But letters stopping is not the same as a file being closed. Sometimes the letters stop because the debt moved from one place to another, and the new place does not send letters. It just waits. The only thing that actually closes this is a confirmation, in writing, that the balance is satisfied and the referral has been withdrawn. If you cannot produce that piece of paper, then as far as this system is concerned, nothing was ever closed. Let me tell you about Doyle. Doyle is 67. He lives in Jackson, Tennessee. He carried mail for the Postal Service for 31 years and now draws a federal pension along with his Social Security. A few years back, he had a state tax balance from a stretch of self-employment work he did after retiring. He called the state. He agreed to a payment arrangement. He paid on it for the better part of a year, and then, believing it was cleared, he stopped. He was wrong about it being cleared, but that is not the part that hurt him. The part that hurt him is that the state had already referred that balance into the federal offset system before he ever made his first payment. And when the payment stopped, nobody withdrew the referral. It simply sat there, waiting for a federal payment with his name on it. His next pension deposit came in short by more than $400. The letter explaining it arrived 2 days after the money was already gone. Doyle had not hidden from anybody. He had called, he had agreed to a plan, he had made payments. He simply did not know that a payment arrangement with one agency does not automatically pull a referral back out of another system. And think about the timing of what happened to him. The letter came 2 days after the money was gone, not 2 days before. Which means at no point did Doyle have a chance to say, "Wait, I have an arrangement, let me show you." There was no window in which his side of the story could have mattered. The system does not work in that order. It acts first and explains afterward and leaves it to you to unwind it. That is not cruelty, it is automation. But the effect on a household is the same either way, and the burden of fixing it lands entirely on the person who was least able to see it coming. Now here is the protection I promised you at the very start. For Social Security specifically, there is a floor. The law protects a minimum amount of your monthly benefit from this kind of offset. Money underneath that line cannot be taken. Verified card. Source: statutory protected minimum on Social Security benefits subject to administrative offset. Confirm current figure before recording. That floor sits at $750 a month. Anything above it can be reached for a qualifying debt. Anything below it is protected. So think about what that means in practice. If your Social Security check is around $1,400, the amount above that floor is what is exposed. The floor itself is not. And here is why I opened the video with this. If you have been offset, and what you are left with is below that protected floor, that is not simply an unfortunate outcome you have to accept. That may be improper, and there is a process to challenge it. And I want to be careful and fair here, because there are different kinds of debts, and they do not all work the same way. Some obligations reach federal payments under different rules than the ones I am describing, with different limits and different protections. Verified card. Source: certain debts, including some tax and support obligations, are governed by separate offset rules and limits. Which is exactly why the first step is always finding out what is actually on file under your name, rather than guessing which category you might be in. You cannot dispute a debt you cannot identify, and you cannot claim a protection until you know which rule your situation falls under. That is a 10-minute phone call that tells you more than an afternoon of worrying ever will. Now, I want to be honest about something in that number because it matters. That floor is a fixed figure written into law. It does not rise automatically with the cost of living, which means every year that groceries and rent go up, that same $750 protects a little bit less than it did the year before. That is not a scandal anybody announced. It is simply what happens when a number written years ago is left sitting where it was written. But it is exactly why knowing the floor matters. Because the floor is the line you are entitled to stand on, and nobody is going to point at it for you. And there is a second protection that almost nobody uses. Before a debt is referred into that system, the agency referring it is required to send you notice first. Verified card. Source: pre-offset notice requirement under 31 U.S.C. 3716. That notice is supposed to tell you the amount, tell you they intend to refer it, and tell you that you have a right to review and dispute it. Notice first, then referral. That is the order the law requires. So if you were offset and no such notice ever reached you, that is a defect in the process, and a defect is something you can raise in writing and ask them to document. And I want to be honest about how much weight that carries, because I will not oversell it. A missing notice does not automatically erase a debt. If the money is genuinely owed, it is still owed. But it absolutely matters for the process. It gives you standing to ask for a review rather than being told the matter is finished. It puts the agency in the position of documenting what they did rather than you trying to prove what they did not. And in a system where almost nobody pushes back at all, being the person who asks for documentation in writing changes how your file gets handled. That is not nothing. Now here's the mistake that costs people the most time, and almost everybody makes it. When the deposit comes in short, people call the agency they think the debt belongs to. That call by itself does not stop anything. The offset was executed by the Treasury side of this, not by the agency that referred the debt. So calling the creditor agency and explaining your situation, however reasonable, does not halt an active offset. What actually stops it is the referring agency formally withdrawing the referral, and that withdrawal reaching the system that executes the offsets. Which means what you are asking for is not sympathy. It is a specific action with a specific name. So here is what to actually do in order. First, find out whether anything is sitting in that system with your name on it before your next payment. There is a call center for exactly this. You call, you provide your identifying information, and the system will tell you whether a debt has been referred and which agency referred it. Verified card. Source: Treasury Offset Program Call Center. Confirm current contact number before recording. Do that while nothing is wrong. That is the entire point. Because knowing about a referral before a payment arrives short is a completely different situation from finding out after. Second, if you were already offset and never got a pre-offset notice, contact the referring agency in writing and ask them to document that notice was sent, when, and how. Keep your request and keep whatever they send back. Third, if the debt is wrong or was already resolved, file the dispute with that referring agency and ask them specifically in writing to submit a withdrawal of the referral. That is the phrase, withdrawal of the referral, not please stop and not I already paid this. Fourth, if you receive Social Security and your payment has been reduced, do the arithmetic on what you were left with. If what remains is below the protected floor, say that out loud when you call. Say that your benefit has been reduced below the protected minimum. That single sentence changes the conversation because it moves you from someone complaining about an amount to someone raising a specific legal protection. And that is exactly what the quiet rules holds, the floor and what it means. The phrase that gets a referral withdrawn instead of explained, which office to call first and which one is a waste of your afternoon, what to write when a notice never arrived. For this and for every rule in this video, sitting in the drawer, in plain English, before your deposit comes in short, not after. You can find it at kevinexplains.shop. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment at the top, or scan the QR code on your screen right now. 7-day guarantee, no questions asked. Because the alternative is a man like Doyle, who called, who agreed to a plan, who paid, and still opened a letter 2 days after his money was gone. And if your own situation is tangled and you want somebody to actually look at it with you, email me. The address is on your screen and in the description below. I read every one. Now, before the checklist, there are 2 more things worth knowing because they change how exposed you are. The first is about joint accounts. If your deposit lands in an account you share with somebody else, a hold or a collection action can, in many situations, reach the entire balance in that account, not just your portion of it. Verified card. Source: Joint account exposure varies by state and account titling. Confirm your state's rules. Which means the money your spouse put in, or the money a family member deposited to help with something, can be sitting inside the same net. The second is what many people try and why it does not work. People assume that if they close the account and open a new one somewhere else, the problem follows the old account and stays there. It does not. An offset is tied to you and to the debt, not to a bank, not to an account number. Moving your money to a different institution does not remove a referral from a federal database, and closing an account and opening a fresh one can actually make holds more likely, not less, because a brand new account relationship is exactly the situation where extended holds are allowed. So the move that feels like escaping the problem usually makes both parts of it worse. The only thing that resolves any of this is working the process directly, finding the referral, disputing it, getting it withdrawn. Now here is your checklist. 5 things. 1. Ask your bank in writing for your account's hold policy on direct deposits. Keep the answer. That is your baseline for every future dispute. 2. If a hold ever cost you fees and you never received written notice of that hold, go back and ask for those fees to be refunded. They will not offer. 3. Ask whoever sends your money for the trace number on your most recent deposit. Once. So you know the word, the process, and the timeline before a payment ever goes missing. 4. Call and find out whether any debt has been referred under your name before your next payment arrives. Knowing in advance is the entire difference. 5. If you have been offset and what you are left with is below the protected floor, say so directly and ask for it to be reviewed. That floor exists for you. And one more, because it protects somebody besides you. If you know somebody who lives on a deposit and has never once questioned a short balance, tell them what is in this video. Not all of it. One line. Tell them that if a deposit comes up short, it is not automatically correct, and there are 3 specific places to look. Because the single most expensive belief in all of this is the quiet assumption that the number on the screen must be right. It usually is, but when it is not, that assumption is what stops a person from ever finding out. Let me leave you with the thing I most want you to keep. Bernadine paid fees on money that was already hers because nobody told her the notice was required. Willard waited weeks for a payment that had a tracking number attached to it the entire time. And Doyle lost $400 out of a pension he earned over 31 years because a referral nobody withdrew was still sitting in a database he did not know existed. Not one of them broke a rule. Not one of them was careless with money. Every one of them had a protection sitting right there, written down, in force, and available. That is what all 3 of these have in common. Your bank owes you a written notice. Your payment carries a number you can ask for, and the government's own program has a floor it is not allowed to cross. Not one of those 3 enforces itself. Every single one of them waits for you to ask. The people who lose money here are almost never the people who had no protection. They are the people who never found out the protection had their name on it. So ask, this week, while your deposit is still landing exactly the way it always has. I am Kevin, thanks for watching. Do not forget to check the quiet rules at kevinexplains.shop.